All right, welcome back to another episode of the Karter Cast. I'm your host, Karter Baughan. Dylan and Connor, as always, with us. Special guest today, Mark in Philly. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I love to be here.
Yeah, there we go. We were talking right before off air. Let's just get right into it. We were talking about the different fan bases. You know, we've all of us here have been in the weeds with some of them. Recently with me with San Francisco. Dylan, I think every NFL fan base in the world for you. Mark, I'm sure you've had your plenty of them. We all know, like, Eagles fans crazy, whatever. Like, we all know that. That's stereotypical, whatever. I think the Texans are the most underrated crazy fan base now.
Yeah, I gotta say real quick, whenever you have someone with a D'Amico Ryans profile picture, their names got 713 Texans lover 96 or reverse those or whatever. I mean, the guys are just wild, and it's something I would have never expected. I said something about CJ Stroud, like, he's not an MVP. I don't think he's an MVP candidate right now. And you would think that I would have said that their whole franchise was ending and it was all over. I mean, it truly shocked me.
Mark, what's the most underrated one?
The one that I don't know if it's underrated, but the one that I've gotten into a lot with over the last couple of years on my podcast, Chalk Talk, me and Shane Half have been at it with Saints Twitter for 2 years now.
Really?
Because we've been really in hard on their season win total unders. I think that's been our podcast play like 3 years in a row in terms of we draft win totals and we pick our favorite win totals. That's always one we always agree on. And this year, not as much as the 2 years previous, but we were in on it again. And Saints Twitter comes after you. I mean, Taysom Hill profile pictures.
Oh yeah.
It's a messy. It's a messy bunch that you're going after it with. And like one tweet, they're talking about how Sean Payton's like the greatest coach of all time. Then the next tweet, it's like, we're not going to be that much worse this year with Dennis Allen. And it's like, oh, okay, we'll see what happens.
You scared of Jameis Winston at all this year, rest of the year?
The shame of it is I'm a big Jameis guy. So the Saints Twitter turned me against him and to a point where I felt like I had to root against him the last time he got his chance. But I mean, I think that there's a couple teams out there who fumbled the bag by not giving the Saints a call to bring Jameis in at the deadline.
Connor, you've never been in the weeds with NFL people, have you?
Not really. I mean, I'll go in these random Panthers Twitter spaces sometimes, just listen, like the deep corners where it's like,
but
just
no Niners
depressing.
Fans wanted to slash your tires for saying Sam Darnold.
No,
might be a better
I've
option than Brock
never
Purdy.
I've never had people come after me like you guys have been coming after on the TikToks, man. I've never had that, so trying to avoid any personal threats like that.
Connor
Lions fans are crazy too. If you talk about their like drafting value and whether or not you like the pick that they made, it's like we draft football players. It's not about where they went. It's about where they fit in to our roster, and we bite kneecaps. Like, and it's working. I guess they're right, but it's like it was pretty weird. Like Jahmyr Gibbs, I do this draft podcast for an Eagles site in Philly, but where we do an episode where we take like 5 guys and it's my guys. And Jahmyr Gibbs, we all do our rankings, and the ones that have the biggest differentials, those are our my guys. Jahmyr Gibbs was one of my 5 my guys because I had him like 24th, and the other people I was doing the stuff with had him like 40th and 50th. The Lions go and take him, I don't even remember exactly what it was, 12th or 13th.
12,
like,
yeah. This
was my guy, and I guess he's not my guy anymore because they took him like way earlier than I would have even ever thought about it. So that's always weird when that happens in the draft. But yeah, I guess it's working out for the Lions. But Lions Twitter was not happy when I was not happy with their draft.
Dylan, do you have any others?
I mean, I went at it with Philly. That wasn't a blast. But those are really the only two I've been at odds with.
You should have known that walking in. You posted that right before we started recording our last podcast, and I warned you. I said, dude, you know what you're getting into with this one. And you knew. I
do want to say, so that was I do a live stream every Monday at noon, and it's just like previewing the next week, kind of recapping the week before. It gets 80 views. Like, it's not a big thing. And I post the clips from it. Any of them get like 300. I mean, it's not a big deal. And then, well, Mark, you said something, then Shane saw something, and it just started blowing up. And I wasn't doing it for, I mean, I'm glad that happened and as many people saw it, but I didn't make that video to say, to stir the pot. I really didn't. It was just
Here.
an honest take I had. And
For
that
people
was
people listening and watching, let me play the video real quick. I have it pulled up. Don't worry. Let's see here, Dylan.
I used the wrong word. I used the wrong word. Dallas outgained Philadelphia by over 100 yards, had 7 more first downs. Dallas dominated this game, and the Eagles come out the winners here, not just in terms of the game, but in terms of media as well. Everybody's, this Eagles team's so good. Well, let's pump the brakes on that a little bit, because there are a lot of games that they've won that maybe they shouldn't.
First comment. First comment.
Over 100 yards.
A lot of people do not need to have a mic. Shout out Dimitri. A lot of people do not need to have a mic. The first comment I see under that.
And you learn a lot. Like, I got a lot of mom's basement. I'm like, buddy, you know a basement that has windows like this? Like, I don't. But yeah, it was. I will reel it back before we get into it, Mark. I said dominated. That was a poor word to use. I did not. It was not domination. I will say that.
Yeah, I actually take more issue with I took more issue with the second part of the message, which is, the national media is talking about how good the Eagles have been, and I think we should pump the brakes. First of all, and I know that like this, I don't know if you guys know this from the outside looking in as much as I do from the inside looking in. I do local sports radio in Philly, and I'm known as like positive homer guy. And the Negadelphians come after me anytime anything negative goes wrong in Philly. And I'm saying, pump the brakes. We're 8-1. You don't have to jump off a bridge. You know, you can relax. They're saying, oh, well, you're a homer. So Dylan had all the people coming after him that are usually yelling at me for being a homer. But the issue is no one is ever going to be more harsh on a Philadelphia sports team than Philadelphia sports fans. Like, we were the number 1 defense in the NFL last year, and we wanted to fire our defensive coordinator the entire season. But it's like one of those things where it's like you can pick on your little brother, but you know, someone else can't talk about your little brother. It's like I can talk about the secondary, and I can talk about how frustrated about our conservative natures late in games when we get a lead. But if Dylan talks about it and uses it this way, then I'm going to get mad. But really, what I think it is I think it's a more nuanced conversation than saying who outplayed who in that game and who dominated who deserved to win. I think what the conversation is are you concerned that the Eagles get really conservative when they're up 9 to 14 points late in games? Because this is something that's happened for 2 years now, where Eagles fans are going nuts late in games, where it's like it felt like we dominated the first 45 minutes of this game. How are we in the last 5 minutes and we need to stop to win, or we need to get a first down to end the game, when it feels like we've been really the better team and we've been up the entire game? And the reason it's been the same for 2 years, they get a 10-point lead and Nick Sirianni's like, there's 10 minutes left. We can run that whole clock. We can get a 10-minute drive, and we don't need to pass the ball, and we don't need to be aggressive. And that doesn't always work when you make it clear every game that that's what you do with a lead. The defense is going to load the box, and the defense is going to stop that. Now, we can say going forward that could be a concern, and going forward that could cost the Eagles a playoff game. I would lay more credence to that if the Eagles hadn't lost like 4 games out of their last 28. In terms of regular season and playoffs, where it seems like we've seen this problem a lot, but this problem never leads to them losing the game, it feels like. And you look at the losses that they've had over that time, and it hasn't been because of that problem. It's been they've been outplayed, or the last year the Commanders outran them, and they just ran the ball down our throats when we had an injured D-line, and that's how they won the game. Like, if the Eagles had a couple instances like the Ravens are happening right now, where the Ravens are letting these teams come back into the games and they're blowing it, then I think there'd be more, weight to throw in the conversation of, is there concerns about how the Eagles close games? But they keep finding a way to win these games, even if it feels quote unquote lucky at the end. I think if you watch the first 45 to 50 minutes of those games, the Eagles feel like the massively better team, and then something happens in the last 10 to 15 minutes. I was going to say,
does part of you think about it like from an NBA point of view? Whenever the Warriors play in the regular season, obviously the NFL way different. Regular season truly matters. NBA not as much. But don't you think it's part of that thing? Like, remember that Hawks team made the Eastern Conference Finals, and then they go into the regular season. They're like, like we don't really care about this as much.
We've
I feel
arrived.
like the Eagles just haven't hit that highest gear yet. Is that crazy?
Yeah, and it's awesome to say that as the only team that's got one loss in the NFL. And it does feel like, man, they haven't hit the highest possible tier. And by the way, they have the hardest strength of schedule in the NFL, the hardest strength of schedule remaining in the NFL. So I will say, Dylan picked a good time to be like, I'm going to come out of the woodworks and be anti-Eagles, because if the Eagles go 3-2, I know he's gonna be against what I said there, but if the Eagles go 3-2 over the next 5 weeks, massive success. Because you looked like before last week, I don't have it exactly right in front of me, but last week they played Dallas. I know this week they play Kansas City. Then they play Buffalo. Then they play San Fran. Then they play Dallas again. Then they go to Seattle, a place where I'd have to look it up. I don't think the Eagles have won in Seattle in like 20 years. Just like a weird fun fact. They don't beat the Seahawks, like, ever. But weird stuff happens. Carson Wentz gets concussed. We fumble out of the back of the end zone. Weird stuff happens when the Eagles go to Seattle. But that's a really tough stretch of 6 games. It's the hardest stretch of 6 games that any team in the NFL plays this year if you look at just the strength of schedule over a 6-game stretch. If the Eagles can go 3-2 in that stretch, they have Giants, Cardinals, Giants after that, 3 games that they should win. If you can just go 3-2 over the next 5 games, you're going to wrap up the 1 seed in the NFC. So we're talking about a team that, yeah, they haven't hit their highest level, but the reason that they've been able to maintain that is because Jalen Hurts is playing like an MVP candidate, and A.J. Brown in his own right is playing like an Offensive Player of the Year candidate. And is it the same as last year where they're dominating teams, with the run game and just running for 250 yards and shutting down offenses? No, it's not. But how much can you really complain when they're 8-1 and they have good wins on their resume? I mean, they held the Dolphins to 10 offensive points. And we can argue, are the Dolphins frauds? Have they beaten any good teams? Their offense is good. And they only put up 10 points. We can talk about the Eagles having defensive problems. They do. But they turned it on for that game. And by the way, those defensive problems will be shown against the greatest quarterback of all time next week. But that's a whole other conversation.
Do you want Miles Sanders back from the Panthers? Because we're not really working things out with him. And, we gave him a 4-year contract.
Frank Reich. Frank Reich, buy one, get one free.
You know what? So Frank Reich, I'd be interested in Frank Reich as an OC. Nick Sirianni, worships the ground Frank Reich walks on. By the way, when Frank Reich gets fired this year, Frank Reich will probably be the OC for the Eagles next year or on the staff.
And probably
Nick
win a
Sirianni. Yeah, there you go. But the funny thing is, Miles Sanders was one of the only players I'm a draft guy, as you guys know. I did not think Miles Sanders was a top 100 prospect when the Eagles took him in the 2nd round, and I never thought he was any good on the Eagles. His rushing yards over expected was never impressive, and I'm seeing now.
You should be hired to the Panthers front office.
The fruits of that take. Then again, I want to whisper this into the mic because I don't want to, I don't want Dylan to get too upset with me talking about rookie quarterbacks too early. But I had Bryce Young over C.J. Stroud, and I don't like talking about it.
Oh, I still have him. I still have Bryce Young. I'm gonna die on that hill.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to. We can transition to rookie quarterbacks now. Dylan, you know the C.J. Stroud. We've beat it. We've beat a dead horse almost with this, but Dylan likes to pick and choose with
the parameters.
Bryce Young, mainly Bryce Young, Will Levis. There's really no denying C.J. Stroud at this point. He's just legit, and it is what it is. Yeah. But the other thing I wanted to bring up too is that. Remember Mac Jones's rookie year? Everyone was like, oh, Mac Jones, how did these people pass on him? Why did the Niners pass on him? Why did the Jets pass on him? Maybe that's still a question. But everyone's going nuts about Mac Jones's rookie year. And since then, it's been terrible. Nothing short of terrible. Do we see the same in Houston, Dylan? I'm setting you up.
You're setting me up here. I really thought he wasn't going to be any good. And, I'm a Michigan fan, obviously. He had no success against us in college. But if there's one thing Ohio State does well, it's they develop wide receivers. And they are really able to make I mean, really any quarterback look good. And we've seen that a little bit with Justin Fields. He's not really panning out much in the NFL. I mean, JT Barrett, I've said it a million times on that. He's up selling autographed jerseys at the Polaris Mall on Saturdays. Like, this guy's not sniffing the field. So I had the same thought process going into this season with CJ Stroud. And it started off like he wasn't doing anything great. I mean, it was good for a rookie quarterback, but it wasn't anything close to what he's done the last 2 weeks. And unfortunately, that set me up for where we are now. And I was just wrong. I mean, to this point. And I don't believe this talk that, these Texans fans are trying to tell me that he's doing it with less weapons than other rookie quarterbacks. I don't think that's true at all. But I mean, the guy's a good quarterback. I was wrong about that. I had nothing else to say there. I wish I could have been right on that one. I really do.
I think we already know the CJ Stroud stuff. Mark, I want to get your opinion on this. Bryce Young versus Will Levis.
Well, so it's tough to separate what I've seen this year and what I thought going into the draft process. And I was a Bryce Young guy. I thought that Carolina made a genius trade. I thought trading DJ Moore instead of a first-round pick when you're a rebuilding team, I thought that was genius. And I thought that was the right path to take, to give up less assets to get a franchise quarterback. And I would have taken Young had I been, in charge of that. So I would have been, I think, wrong at this point for sure. I was not a Will Levis guy. I had him about 40th on my big board. And the people I did content with had him a lot lower than that. So I was in terms of the people I was doing content with. But I
Jimmy
actually
Clausen 2.0.
Jimmy, that hits home as a Notre Dame fan. But the funny thing about Will Levis is I was really impressed until this last Tampa game. This last Tampa game was not awe-inspiring. I'd have to, rewatch it. I had it on with 6 other games. I had money on Tennessee in that game, unfortunately. But I was not impressed by Levis this week. I have been pretty impressed by Levis, the Pittsburgh game, the game before that he was just throwing it up to Hopkins. I forget who they were playing in that game. I thought they were pretty impressive in those games. Levis has definitely looked better at this point than I would have guessed he would have. He's definitely the most project of any of the rookie quarterbacks, the most raw kind of. He's being drafted for traits and traits alone. And I think at this point you have to feel pretty good about what you've seen from Levis. That doesn't mean that I would take him over Young, but it's hard. The Bryce Young thing is hard to wrap your head around. I'm fine fully blaming Frank Reich and the receivers and the offensive line, but I don't know if Carolina is going to be able to fix all of those things in time for any of it to matter for Bryce Young in Carolina.
That's the biggest concern. That's the biggest concern. Because, I mean, what are you supposed to do? Dylan, you said this last night, and you keep saying it all day today, texting me. You can't make the throws if you're on the ground.
Mark, it's really interesting. If you've been listening at all, it's really just become a whose team is worse situation and who can we alleviate the most pressure off the quarterback by blaming other things.
Panthers are much worse than the Titans.
Well,
you got Vrabel.
Yeah, I mean, Vrabel, great head coach. I'm not a fan how when Levis came into the situation, he was not willing to give him any flowers of any sort. Like, he threw for 4 touchdowns and the guy was ignoring his existence. He just said, oh yeah, well, we made good plays or whatever. That irked me a little bit. But historically, I've been a Vrabel guy. I think PFF said 20 or 21 pressures on Levis Sunday. And, like, you can't do anything as a quarterback with that. Dillard left in the middle of the game. We were out of left tackle. The interception he threw, Karter and Connor and I went at this yesterday. He was hit while he was throwing. Obviously, that throw was nowhere close to a receiver. That was not his intended target. So I understand. Now, the Philadelphia Dallas thing, no bias. I just have no bias there. Here I have bias because I'm a Titans fan, and I can acknowledge that. So I don't know. I think this is real small brain talk here, but I watched the guy throw the ball, and it just looks beautiful. And it's not like Tannehill. He throws a beautiful ball. He makes some iffy decisions that I think he'll fix as he gets more starts under his belt. But these guys, Karter and Connor, they're sitting here telling me back in March, Bryce Young, playmaker. Bryce Young, the guy can extend the plays, make the plays. He's not making any plays. I don't care how bad the situation is.
I'm not saying no.
Situation's really bad.
That's what I'm saying. No one can make those plays. CJ Stroud in the same system. They're probably one win better, maybe.
CJ Stroud and Bryce Young are not the same. They don't have the same skill profile, though. Bryce Young's, in my opinion, and I'm not a big draft guy.
Dylan, what I'm saying is I don't think it matters what quarterback is in Carolina. It's a disaster situation.
All right.
I got a question for Mark. So it's funny, Dylan, you talked about, you look at Levis throw the ball and man, it just looks beautiful in eye test. We have this argument all the time, Mark. How much stock do you put in stats and numbers versus what you see and what you feel, as far as like, can this guy lead you down the field for a game-winning drive with 2 minutes left versus like what the numbers say? Like, how much stock do you put in each side? Because Dylan's a big numbers guy. Funny when it's his quarterback, though, the eye test matters.
The scale slides, but that's everybody, and that's confirmation bias, and it's hard. Draft evaluation is such a, you can spider chart it if you want, and you can make, your entire philosophy based on spider charts and based on, relative athletic score and a couple metrics that you can really care about. But I mean, production matters as well, for sure. So it's really hard. And I think some players, I think really what you're looking for is elite ability or elite production. So if you have a guy who has elite production and maybe some of his, athletic scores lag behind, you can excuse it because you can say, well, look at what he did. Let's say he did it in the SEC. Look at what he did production-wise against the best of the best in the SEC. That's kind of the Bryce Young.
Is height included in that?
Yeah, you could include height. And then if you wanted to say the opposite for a guy like Will Levis, where it's like your argument with Will Levis is not production. He was unproductive in the SEC at Kentucky. Now there's reasons for that. Just like there's reasons for Bryce Young struggling in the NFL. There's reasons why Levis struggled at Kentucky, especially that last year, and I want to mention that in just a second. But he has elite traits that you can start talking yourself into and making excuses for. It's the guys who are in between that, who don't have elite traits or anything that you can point out, or don't have that elite production, similar like Justin Jefferson had, or like, he didn't necessarily have the elite traits and combine testing, Justin Jefferson, but the Will Levis thing is funny, and it kind of not that I'm saying he's Justin Herbert, but it kind of reminds me of a Justin Herbert thing where Levis and Herbert, after Levis's first year at Kentucky and after Herbert's sophomore or junior season, whatever his second to last season in college was, I was really high on both, and I kind of talked myself out of Levis the whole last year he was at Kentucky. He put so much on tape that I didn't like. And same thing happened with Herbert. Justin Herbert started throwing picks aplenty his last year at Oregon, and that made me nervous. I went from thinking, oh, this guy's a guy who makes great decisions to, well, what is this guy if he's not making great decisions? And I psyched myself out on Herbert, and I swung and missed on that one. I had Tua over him. Doesn't look as bad now, but it's still not right. The Herbert stuff was wrong. And I could have kind of whiffed the same way on Levis, where I was too low on him because I got too invested in the bad tape that he put out his last year when he was in a bad situation with a terrible offensive coordinator. We're seeing that now. Kentucky's a mess. And you're also seeing the fact that he was probably hurt that year. So maybe I was too low on Levis for that scenario. Now, Bryce Young, here, the other side of things, the playmaker, the elite production in college. The weird thing about Bryce Young and guys like him, and it didn't happen in this scenario, he went first, but the reason guys like a Will Levis and like even an Anthony Richardson, who even it doesn't really exactly fit the profile of what I'm going to talk about here, but guys like that, the reason that they generally grade out well and do better in the draft process than playmakers and guys like Lamar Jackson, who fell all the way in the first round, is it's hard to simulate those scenarios that those quarterbacks need to be improvisational. So guys like Jalen Hurts fall to the middle of the second round. Guys like Lamar Jackson fall to 32nd. Even Deshaun Watson, who, nasty man. We're not allowed to talk about him from a football standpoint. But when he came out of college, he fell too far. And I think a lot of that was because we weren't able to test his improvisational ability, off schedule as much as you'd like to in the draft process. So I think guys like that who rely so much on, being a gamer and mostly running quarterbacks, to put it bluntly, I think you can't create scenarios for them to thrive unless it's in actual game time. And I think that's a big part of why you see those guys slide in the draft. Didn't happen with Bryce Young, though.
100% agree. All right, let's talk about Thursday Night Football. Bengals, Ravens. Last I checked, it was Ravens by 3.5, correct? 4?
Yeah.
3.5,
3.5, 4. Dylan, start us off here. We got finally have a great Thursday Night Football game. No more Zach Wilson. No more Carolina Panthers. No more Tyler Badgett, whatever. We finally get good football on Thursday night. Ravens minus 3.5. What's the play here?
Yeah, so I've been high on the Bengals the last couple weeks. They didn't look that great against the Texans. The defense, I was actually digging into the Bengals defensive statistics, allowing like 5.5 yards per play. I think the 7th or 8th most. It really wasn't as great as I expected. Now, Hendrickson is supposed to be playing Thursday, which he either got injured last week or maybe he was out. But the Ravens, obviously coming off of that really, they just Ravens. I saw some stat. I think it was Pete Schrager that tweeted it out, and it was like time trailing through the first 10 weeks of the season.
I saw that graphic.
Yeah, it had like 7.5 minutes, and then there were 5 other teams or whatever, and then it had their record through those games. Everyone was 10-0 except for the Ravens, who were it was like 8-2 or maybe 7. I can't remember what it was, but it was very alarming. With that being said, I think that I think the Ravens are match up very good against the Bengals. We don't really know what we're getting. Jamar Chase, injury-wise, especially this early in the week, we're really going off limited information. But if I had to take a side right now, I would say Ravens getting the 3.5 at home. And I don't like taking divisional favorites, but I think this is a spot where you have to do it.
Mark, what do you think?
Man, it's funny. I feel like my boss at the radio station that I work at, Fox Sports The Gambler, Sean Brace, he has me on every Thursday. And I feel like every Thursday night, he's like, who do you got? And I'm always like, I think it's a stay away. And I feel like he wants to fire me on the spot. Like he's like Vince McMahon.
Where's your headline take? Come on, Mark.
Yeah. He's like, dude, don't you get it? Like, we're on a microphone. Say something interesting. But I feel like this is a perfectly set line by Vegas. Good job to the books out there. If I had to, if I'm in a pool and I have to pick every game, I would bet Ravens minus 3.5 if I had to. I think the Ravens win the game. Therefore, with a small spread, I guess you take them. But if you're going by the principle of who needs it more, then Cincy needs it more. But Baltimore, I do think, has a nice matchup against Cincinnati here, even though Cincinnati's done pretty well against them in the past. This is just a game I have too many, conflicting thoughts on. There's not always money in the gold. Sometimes there's money in the dumpster.
Connor.
Yeah, so I know Cincinnati just dropped that last-second field goal to Houston and, bounce back. That's going to be the narrative, like Bengals coming back. The Ravens also just lost to the Browns on that huge comeback, and they blew that game. I like the Ravens in this spot. I really do. I think the Ravens are a legitimate contender this year in the AFC, and people are, going to be talking about Lamar and MVP conversation the next couple weeks, I feel like. And the Ravens, this Keaton Mitchell guy from ECU, he needs to get more work because, they played Seattle, obviously a blowout, 37-3. He had 9 rushes, 138 yards, that long touchdown. Only had 3 carries this week. Still scored a touchdown, that long run. They continue to feed Gus Edwards, Justice Hill. I like Keaton Mitchell. I think he needs more work, honestly. But in this spot, I like the Ravens, and I think Lamar's going to have a big game.
I literally think before we recorded this, I saw a tweet that said that he would be getting more work this week.
Really?
Because I tweeted something like Gus Edwards fantasy owners, and it was some sad gif or whatever. But yeah, and the Bengals rush defense, not that great. That was another thing I was looking into, like allowing chunk runs, which is not characteristic of them, at least to the point this season. They're allowing those chunk runs. So yeah, that's big, Connor.
You mentioned Lamar being in the MVP conversation. He's who I would currently vote if I had to vote for MVP. I think it would be Lamar. But I do honestly think Lamar, Hurts, and Stroud. Sorry, Dylan. I do think all three have a really good argument. I would put it in that order right now. I would put Lamar 1, Hurts 2, Stroud 3. Mahomes probably will win it and probably will deserve to win it. And honestly, I'm probably doing the thing I complained that people did to LeBron for years. Like, we probably should just hand the award to Patrick Mahomes in week 1 and be like, here you go, don't lose it. Like, that's probably what we should do. But it's hard. He has had a couple bad games, and I do feel like the defense might be the better unit on that team than the offense, so it's hard to give it to Mahomes. So I would vote him 3rd or 4th, though. I think he probably ends up winning it, but right now I would give it to Lamar. And I agree with the Keaton Mitchell thing. Gus Edwards and Justice Hill are not going to cut it. I was begging for them to trade for Jonathan Taylor or Derrick Henry. I really wanted it badly, but Keaton Mitchell will do, I think. Or at least it'll do better than Hill.
Does Gus the Bus have something over the Ravens coaching staff to where he just keeps getting 15 carries no matter what? He's getting, 2 yards a carry? Like,
he's the least dynamic NFL running back to receive a carry in the last 5 years. I think that's
now. Najee Harris is still active.
Miles Sanders still is a starting running back in the NFL.
Yeah, Miles Sanders is good.
Najee's been a little better lately. He hasn't been
has.
quite as much of an abomination.
If the Bengals lose this game, they are 5-5. You kind of have to hover your hand over the panic button, or maybe even hit the button, because right now I think they're about the same odds as the Bills, right about -125 to make the playoffs. So fairly even odds, 5-4. This division, for some reason, like the Steelers and Browns, it's the worst football to watch yet. They're still 6-3 somehow. It makes no sense. The Bengals, they're in trouble here if they don't win this game. This is a sneaky must-win.
My counterpoint to that would be, aren't they nearing the end of their tougher stretch of the schedule? I remember a couple weeks ago we were talking about it started with the Bills. I guess maybe we didn't expect the Texans to be as tough as it was going to be. And then the Ravens, another tough one. They have the 49ers next?
So they had Seahawks beat the Niners, beat the Seahawks, beat the Niners, beat the Bills, and then lose Texans. They have Ravens, Steelers, Jags, Colts, Vikings, Steelers, Chiefs, Browns. Not an easy game on that schedule.
Easy. That is not easy.
There's not one easy game left.
Okay, I was wrong about that. I was remembering
like
incorrectly.
At Arrowhead, well, they kind of win at Arrowhead. Maybe they win that one, maybe. But
Arrowhead?
Yeah, they got to play Dobbs. They got to play the
Pastronaut,
as Dylan says. Yeah.
Dude, don't get me started. Don't get me started. The Vikings are going to go 11-6, 12-5 this year.
There we go. I was worried you were going to go the other way, Mark. That's what we like to hear.
Kevin O'Connell, it might be the most underappreciated coach in the history of team sports. Like,
Mark, did you watch Quarterback, the Netflix series?
I didn't. I
didn't.
You want to.
If you watch it, he's only in there for like 2 minutes or 3 minutes or so, but immediately you're like, oh, this guy gets it. He's got
some good answers.
I'm sure he does. He comes off really well in interviews, but I kind of planted my flag on my podcast the whole last year where everyone was, complaining about the Vikings winning these close games. And I understand what they were complaining about, but no one was saying, oh, you know what? Maybe the head coach of this team that's 10-1 in close games is making some good decisions late in games and, going for 2 in the right times, kicking field goals in the right times, going for it on 4th in the right times. Like, I just think Kevin O'Connell makes the right call like 9 out of 10 times when he's out there. Seems like he has a good relationship with the guys on his team. He might be like, if I was ranking head coaches, we do it every offseason on my pod. I feel like he'd be in my top 7 right now. Like, I think Kevin O'Connell.
What if you're ranking O'Connell's?
The year candidate.
What if you're ranking O'Connell? So Kevin, Aiden,
Aiden's last.
Okay.
Aiden's
Just
last.
curious.
I had him plus 800 to anytime touchdown, and I talked myself into it so hard 2 weeks ago because he had gotten pushed like 2 months ago when he played. So I bet it hard last week and like multiple units. And at the end of the game, you lose those units, and it's like, why did I bet multiple units on Aiden O'Connell anytime touchdown? I could have had a nice day.
I'm on Siakam triple-double plus 5,500 tonight, and I'm like, you know what? What a stupid bet, but it was just too enticing. I don't know.
Well, I didn't have multiple. I was going to say, I didn't have multiple units on Aiden O'Connell over 0.5 rushing yards last night.
Did he cash it?
He did. He had 3.
He did cash it.
There you go.
I was sweating out that QB sneak. Oh, he got 3 yards. He was holding firm to those 3 yards. So
that's great.
We cashed that. But the
Vikings,
Vikings, they're awesome. But go ahead.
If we're talking about bets that are definitely not going to cash but are worth betting right now, it's Miami to cut down the Nets and win the national championship 40-1.
Oh wow!
Men's basketball. Anyone who follows me knows that I am the biggest Jimmy Larinaga guy in the business today. I've had futures on them to make the Final Four and national title like the last 3 years. So I love this Miami team.
Cleveland just fits like a glove on this team. I mean, just such an underrated transfer going to Miami. I love Miami 40-1. I'm always you know this too, Mark. I'm a huge Jim Larinaga guy, also a huge Kansas football guy. You know this.
Oh, Lance Leipold. He tested me this week. Week. We took an L, but it's one of those things. It's like Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown, where I've cashed so many of them that, the weeks that it doesn't cash, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to bet it harder next week. It'll be
double down. Martingale system.
Exactly. Bengals Ravens real quick. All I have to say is if I'm not going to take anything, I'm leaning Ravens. I don't feel great about the Bengals team after that game. Both coming off bounce back spots. Let's move on. Let's talk Monday Night Football. I think this is the best game of the year. I think ESPN sold their soul to the devil to get this game with the Kelsey brothers and the Taylor Swift conundrum. Someone made a backdoor deal to make this happen because Eagles Chiefs in Arrowhead. I'll let the resident Eagles fan take us through this one.
By the way, it's funny. The NFL, the National Football League, Roger Goodell, commissioner. Some people know his name. He decided to add an extra football game to people's schedule. Harmless, right? Everyone gets to add an extra game, so it doesn't affect anyone greater than anybody else. It's interesting when you add an extra game to someone's schedule, and that extra game happens to be going to Arrowhead to play the greatest quarterback of all time. It's not, it's nice. It's nice to play the hardest schedule in the NFL, and then let's add a 17th game, and let's send you to the team that beat you in the Super Bowl last year, and let's have it be on their home turf. And let's put it after they have a bye week too, and let's also put it after you have your bye week, so we ruin your bye week. Yeah, I don't feel good.
Michigan needs to take notes. Hard schedule.
Yeah,
you can't keep doing this, Connor.
Sorry,
schedule for next year. We're past it. We passed our test.
I'm sorry, it's just sitting there right in front of me. Sorry, keep going.
This is for you, Jim Harbaugh. But I just want to say, no, I'm joking. But it's absolutely depressing that this game is even taking place. I don't feel good about it. If I wasn't an Eagles fan, I'd be taking Chiefs -3. The one thing that makes me feel good is that Bieniemy's not there. Eric Bieniemy clearly schemed us up, in the Super Bowl last year, 2 touchdowns that were just uncovered.
And with Sam Howell.
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say. 2 times this year, Sam Howell's looked like, prime Russell Wilson against the Eagles. Luckily, we've won both of those games, but we won those games because of the Commanders' defense. And the Commanders' defense has serious problems, but Bieniemy schemed us up more than any other coach has the entire year, twice. And, our 3 worst defensive performances of the last 2 years have been against Eric Bieniemy. So that's the one thing that I'm holding on to a little bit of hope in. It's Matt Nagy calling those plays and not Eric Bieniemy. Ultimately, I think Andy has the film from those games and Bieniemy's games in Washington. I think Andy will be able to figure it out himself. But I don't feel good about it. I would bet the Chiefs if I was not, otherwise inclined.
Dylan.
Yeah, I just looked at this one very quickly. It moved up to 3, I think today. It was 2.5 when I checked last night. I don't want to be accused of jinxing anything, given that I was at odds with the Eagles fans last week. But the only thing I'm going to say, I'm not even going to say it. That's all I got.
I got Chiefs -3 in this one.
Wow. Okay. Jeez. I want to hear about it, Carter. Tell me why.
If this was, it's because it's an Arrowhead. It's an Arrowhead, and that Super Bowl, man. That Super Bowl, they were just going to town on that defense, man. Like, I just can't get past that. And like, Bieniemy doesn't scare me as much, him not being there, because Andy Reid's running the show, I feel like. So that doesn't really, and also it's just Pat Mahomes, Monday Night Football, coming off a bye week. Yeah, it's tough because the Chiefs feel like they lose these regular season ones but win the playoff ones. Like last year, was it Bills? It was the Bills in Arrowhead, right? The big primetime game. Bills come in and whoop them, and everyone's like, should the Bills be the best team in the league? Are they better than the Chiefs? Are they the Super Bowl favorites? maybe we see that, but maybe the Eagles, are riding high. They haven't hit that higher gear yet, like we talked about, and the Chiefs should come in and take care of business. Because I feel like the Chiefs, they've been on cruise control more than anybody in this league so far.
Yeah, I think that's fair. If you put a gun to my head, I'm taking the Chiefs here. This seems like one of those games where the Eagles drop it, and then all of a sudden, Eagles Twitter, Mark, I'm sure you know this, all the Eagles fans are like, we'll never be up there. We can't beat the Chiefs. It's like, hold your horses. You have 2 losses. So if they go, like you said, they go 3-2 in these 5 games, it's a success. It seems like one of those turning points where the Eagles maybe get beat, and it's like, okay, we're going to have to not change some things, but their season kind of takes off from there. Maybe they do start taking it more seriously. So I like the Chiefs here, especially with 3 or less.
Karter,
yeah, it definitely feels like one of those games they lose at the end, and then Jason Kelsey's in the locker room, and it's like we got shit to figure out. Like we gotta get in practice, like, and it's gonna be like all that stuff. And then I think you have that exactly right. And the thing that I've been saying all year, people have asked me like on a bunch of different podcast radio shows, like, Chiefs, what's your concern level with the Chiefs at different points of this year? And at every point of this year, I've said 0. Because this defense looks like every bit of a top 5 defense. And if you give me Patrick Mahomes and a top 5 defense, I'm going to take that team to win the Super Bowl. Like, I think that's the perfect build. I think they've done a great job. You look at what they've done in the first and second round of the last couple of years, it's been strictly offensive linemen and defensive players. They're not spending any assets at running back and receiver because they think Patrick Mahomes with a good O-line will probably be enough. And I think they're right. So everyone's freaking out about receivers. Rashee Rice is playing a little better down the stretch. They're getting McKinnon more involved. Kelsey's going to be Kelsey. I think that, the Chiefs are going to be in the Super Bowl. We've seen in Patrick Mahomes' career, you have a 100% chance of making the AFC Championship, a 50% chance of making the Super Bowl in his career. Or is it 60 actually? Is it 3 out of 5 years that he started? I think it might be 60% of the years that he's made the Super Bowl. It's just the guy. This is a whole other conversation. I don't know how I turned down this alley, but I say this all the time, and I'm a LeBron guy. Patrick Mahomes is better at the sport of football than anybody has been in our life at their sport. You can argue Ohtani, maybe. Ohtani's such a unicorn, I guess.
What about Serena Williams?
Yeah. Team sports, I should say. Team sports. I think like Mahomes, the gap between him and whoever you want to say number 2 is in football is bigger than the gap ever was between LeBron and KD or whoever you want to say was second at any point of those runs. So it's hard for me to. The only time I've bet against Patrick Mahomes in his career was the Super Bowl. It didn't go well. So I probably won't be doing that very well.
Mark, anytime you get the Chiefs, though, like 5.5, 6.5 point favorites. I mean, there's plenty of evidence out there that anytime you get over a field goal, for some reason, it doesn't work out. And this is obviously betting perspective. We're getting away from like who's going to win the Super Bowl, all that talk. But from betting, I always feel like I see something about, the Chiefs as more than a field goal favorite. You can't trust them. And I feel like for the most part, because Karter, Connor, when we do our show, like that's kind of a mantra. I don't want to say we live by it, but whenever we talk about Chiefs games, it's at least considered.
Yeah. Yeah. You see 6.5 and all of a sudden it's like bet the other side. Yeah.
At the end of the day, when you're not covering as a favorite, you're still winning the game. So in a bigger scheme, it doesn't matter. But if you're talking about betting, go ahead, Mark.
They're good as a short favorite. I know that I don't know the exact numbers, but I know in games that Mahomes, it's between a field goal, so +3 to -3. I know his numbers have been crazy. This is a -3 situation. I do have my main bet on this game is an anytime touchdown. As I mentioned earlier, it's Jalen Hurts. It's the best bet in sports. It's the fact that they're still making this anything under -150, like to make you not eat juice to bet this is just, it's a 401k. It's a bond. Like just put your money in there and watch it grow. It's been incredible.
Yeah, Hunter, it's the best bet in sports right now. It's the best bet in sports.
That if they outlaw the tush push, I am going to be insufferable online about it.
Dylan, do you think they should outlaw the tush push?
No, absolutely not. I've always said from day one, any way that you can gain a competitive edge short of killing a man,
like watching other teams?
Oh yeah,
illegally?
Any
scouting,
competitive edge.
Connor Stallions,
So I'll audible for Dylan a little bit, but this is along the same line. People are talking about, and I don't mean to segue here, but people are talking about Michigan and the fact that they didn't throw a pass in the second half, and whether or not did they trust JJ McCarthy or was he hurt? That I'm not a Michigan guy. I'm not going to tell you that it was the most impressive win of all time, or I'm not going to cry for Jim Harbaugh. But what I will say is that's man football right there. Like, that is, I'm better than you, I'm bigger than you, and we're going to shove it down your throat. And that's what the tush push is. Like, the tush push is we're lining up, you know what we're running, stop it. And you can run it on your end if you want to run it. But guess what? You don't have Jason Kelce, Landon Dickerson, and Jalen Hurts, who squats 600 pounds. People don't mention Landon Dickerson. People mention Kelce. People mention Hurts. Landon Dickerson was the guy doing cartwheels at his pro day 2 months after tearing his ACL. That guy's an insane athlete who's the one who's pushing inside on the tush push. But that's a whole other conversation.
It's time. We got to discuss it. Dylan, you know what time it is. Connor, you know what time it is. Taylor Swift's going to be at this game probably. I don't know the tour. She might not be.
See, I don't think so. Don't think she's there.
Whoa, okay, hold up. Before we get this crazy, Dylan, I'll get stats department on it. But Mark, with the whole Taylor Swift stuff, are you annoyed by it? Are you tired by it? Are you just like, whatever, I don't give a crap? What is your thoughts about this? Because we've been getting dragged online with it.
It's our most viewed clips.
Swifties are insane. Swifties are insane.
Are you guys anti-Swifty?
No, not anti.
Is
but
Karma's not your boyfriend on this podcast?
No, it's not. The bell curve is. We were talking about fan bases getting in the weeds on Twitter. The Taylor Swift fan base is who I've been in the weeds with the most, just because us having these clips out there, and I look at my phone, it's like 300 notifications just trashing the video. Like, you guys don't know anything. She doesn't need any man in her life, blah, 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 all this. And we're just getting thrashed. So I'm curious. Yeah, Mark, like Karter said, what's your opinion on this whole thing?
Yeah, so I've been pretty negative on Taylor Swift for a long time. I'm a big Jake Gyllenhaal guy.
Oh, no.
I like him. My wife doesn't like him. I'm a Jake fan.
Yeah. When Gyllenhaal was getting retroactively canceled 10 years later last year, I was like, what are we doing here? Like, this guy dated someone 10 years ago and he's waking up like, wait a second, I'm canceled? Like,
I'm in the news cycle.
I thought that was brutal. But my fiance is a devout, probably has 7 burner accounts. Swifty. No, not really. I'm joking.
That's awesome, Mark. If that is true, that is awesome.
But no, I don't think she's got burners. But she's a full on goes to the concerts, goes to the movie. So I have to hear all about it.
Did you have to go to the movie?
No.
I got dragged.
Yeah. I don't have enough time. I'm too damn busy. Or I would go. I don't hate. She always has had bops. I'm willing to admit that there are bangers on the catalog. Is she up there with Gaga for me? No, I think Gaga's got more bangers. If we're going banger for banger, I'll take Gaga all day long.
I'll take Olivia Rodrigo.
You'll take Olivia Rodrigo?
Olivia Rodrigo.
That's a stretch.
Budding generational megastar. Olivia
Y'all
Rodrigo,
are high. Taylor Swift.
I just want to plant that flag. I just want to buy stock here on this podcast. Olivia Rodrigo.
I didn't say that, Karter. I asked Mark if I was confirming what I heard.
No. Taylor Swift way above Gaga, Rodrigo.
Don't disrespect Gaga. I mean,
I'm not disrespecting. I'm more so saying Taylor Swift is above that.
That's tough. That's a tough pill for me to swallow. What about Miley? Where does Miley fit into this conversation?
There's some bangers.
Dylan.
Miley's number 1 all time for me, I think.
Oh, that I don't think
what?
Dylan has to be such a guy. Dylan has to be a big time anti.
Dylan hated Wrecking Ball. I know Dylan hated Wrecking Ball.
Bangers just. I mean, it's just a anthem after anthem on bangers.
Yeah, and Dylan, when Wrecking Ball came out in the photo where she's naked on the bulldozer thing or whatever, Dylan's 16-year-old Dylan's like, what are they doing about these kids? This isn't right.
This industry's gone to shit. Oh my gosh.
We had a whole youth group sermon on it the next Sunday. I mean, I remember it like it was nobody's business. In all seriousness, not a Miley fan, not even a big Lady Gaga fan. I like Taylor. I have a couple vinyls right out there in the living room. It's okay. I mean, it's just sitting out there. Now, do we do we kind of play up the Taylor Swift bits on here? Yeah, because we know that, post them on TikTok, get people talking. But I don't know. Olivia Rodrigo and Taylor, to me, if we really want to get into the weeds, I like Olivia Rodrigo. I actually tweeted a picture of Get Him Back before this Apple
anthem.
Yeah, before this little Apple commercial started airing. And you commented and you said it was like an all-time song. But I think Rodrigo and Taylor are almost two different music genres to be compared. Like Taylor's, other than Reputation, Taylor's a little more like boppy, poppy, and Olivia's stuff, the faster stuff, is more like, I kind of think Paramore.
That's fair. That's a fair comp.
We're
It's
getting
like
in the weeds.
The pop punk
say the
fan
weeds,
in
it's
me.
fine.
I'm an Olivia Rodrigo guy. I'm buying stock, but it's just up my alley.
Yeah, but on the record, I don't vibe with Gaga or Miley, but I do with Taylor and Rodrigo.
Oh, Gaga, bangers upon bangers in the catalog. I'll just say, like, my fiance just runs through it, and it's like, oh, I forgot about that song. I forgot about that song.
I got
about Katy
favorite.
Perry for you? Dylan, talk to me about Katy Perry.
I am a Katy Perry guy. So for my bachelor party, we went to Vegas, and waking up in Vegas. I mean, that song was pretty much on repeat the whole time. I mean, she has hits too. Her newer stuff isn't that great, but when we're going like Teenage Dream, like the 2000,
California,
California Girls, 2010 to 2014, 15, up to Dark Horse, I think was when. Yeah, Dark Horse came out and she kind of went downhill. But that
Dark
4 or
Horse
5 years,
banger.
yeah, that was a good song.
Yeah,
I like her.
With all this being
Good
said,
pop culture corner.
Chiefs -3. Oh, I did get stats department on it. She has a show Sunday night in Rio de Janeiro, but nothing on Monday the 20th.
I doubt she shows up in the middle of the international tour.
If she shows up in the middle of the international tour, I won't say a word. I won't question her commitment.
We'll have to roll back the non-football girl takes that we said whenever she wasn't at the snow
100%.
game. The fake snow game.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. I will take it all back.
If her next like, show doesn't go well, is she gonna have to answer questions at the press conference? Like, are you distracted?
We need to make that happen. Can Karter Cast get credentialed? Karter Cast in conjunction with Philly the Gambler.
Taylor.
Yeah.
Karter from the Karter Cast. I just want to ask, did that third down play call that didn't go well in the fourth quarter for Kansas City have any impact on deciding not to play Love Story tonight?
Did not cashing Kelsey anytime touchdown really hurt your performance tonight?
It sounded like you were out of breath after that fourth song. Can you comment on the stumble you took before you started playing Karma? I don't know. It's
I went to her concert. She was not out of breath one time. But let's do real quick NFL parlays. I know we're recording right now Monday at like 7:30 Eastern time, so brutal time to like make bets and do all that. But we're gonna do it anyways. We're gonna do a quick NFL touchdown parlay, or not NFL. Or NFL parlay, and then an anytime touchdown parlay. Dylan, give us an NFL pick.
Titans Jags under 40.5. Both these defenses, in terms of yards per play, that's what I look at when we're determining explosiveness that a defense allows. Both actually do well at containing the explosive play. Will Levis, you don't know what you're going to get. 40.5 just seems too high for a divisional game between these two teams.
All right, Mark, do you have a pick? If not, we can move on.
I do. I'm looking at Sunday Night Football, and I'm looking at the Pastronaut. I mean, how could you not back Josh Dobbs in this spot? It's hard to say because we don't know what's happening with the Broncos on Monday Night Football. But I'm willing to say, no matter what happens, I'll be on the Vikings if they're an underdog in that game. I think the Vikings are for real. Like I said earlier, I think Kevin O'Connell is, just an absolutely game-changing head coach for a guy like Josh Dobbs. And, what we're seeing out of Josh Dobbs' legs, that's just adding, like, I almost want to have the take that I think that they're better with Josh Dobbs than Kirk Cousins. It's hard to have that take already, but if his legs continue to be utilized this way, Kirk Cousins didn't have that in his repertoire. So I'm willing to say if they get Jefferson back, they could be better than ever, Minnesota.
Wow. Dobbs versus Cousins. Who's to say, Dylan?
So I don't want to get off track here, but I do have Vikings fans on the inside. My dad and my brother are both Vikings fans, and they texted in our group chat this week that they are excited about Dobbs because he doesn't take sacks like Cousins does, which he did. I mean, Cousins, anytime he felt pressure, there was no extending a play. It was just, which isn't necessarily, it's not, it's better than making a bad throw, I guess, but when you have someone that can escape it, obviously that's the number one choice. So Vikings fans on the inside, very excited. And I love that pick.
Give us a pick.
I'm going divisional game here. Steelers Cleveland under 37.5. Steelers haven't scored over 26 points all year. Can't trust Kenny Pickett. Somehow they're 6-3. I've not believed in this team since the preseason. And then look on the other side, Browns. Deshaun Watson. I mean, yeah, they put up over 30 on the Ravens. He looked okay at spurts. I don't trust him to carry that over next week. So give me under 37.5 in the divisional game. Steelers
Karter,
Browns.
I like that.
This parlay is so good right now. Please don't give me an over.
It's not an over. It's not an over.
Okay. All right. There we go. There we go.
I'm going Cardinals +4 against the Texans.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm going Texans lighting a little Icarus riding too close to the sun. Cardinals. Kyler Murray was electric. Yes. I forget how funny he is to watch. And then watching yesterday, unfortunately, had Falcons money line and, bad day for the Falcons. But Cardinals, oh man, watching Kyler, I think +4 is too many points. I think this game ends in a last-second field goal. Give me Cardinals +4. That's the NFL parlay this week. Dylan, Titans, Jags under 40.5. Connor, Steelers, Browns under 37.5. Mark, Vikings money line, and then myself, Cards +4 against the Texans. Anytime touchdown. Mark, I'm going to let you go ahead. I think we know where you're going with this one.
Yeah, I will give you two options just in case the Jalen, because we don't have the markets yet. Just in case Jalen's at -150 or something and the juice is too high. If Vegas finally figures out that what they should be doing. The other TD prop that I've been betting every single week has been Jake Ferguson from Dallas Cowboys, who I've actually been investing in fantasy as well. I've been buying stock in Ferguson. I think there's a good chance he's a top 5 tight end the rest of the way. He's second in red zone targets among receivers and tight ends, right behind Travis Kelce. He is a guy who Dak continues to look to in the red zone. And right before CeeDee Lamb, kind of these last couple games, is playing like the best receiver in football, they asked Jerry Jones if CeeDee Lamb should get more targets on his radio show, and he said, "Nah, I like getting the tight end the ball." And I
of
think
course
that
he would
says
say that.
Yeah, that's Jerry.
I think that says everything about why Jake Ferguson gets the ball, why Dalton Schultz used to get the ball, why Jason Witten used to get the ball. And I think that there's a certain archetype of guy who Jerry likes seeing.
Cole Beasley, big Cole Beasley fan.
Scrappy guys.
Yeah. But I think that Jake Ferguson, it's usually set around like +200, +220. I think it's cashed 3 out of the last 4 weeks. I know it cashed the last 2 weeks. But yeah, it's been a bet that I've been riding for 2-3 months now. Zeke was my cowboy that I bet every week last year. For the anytime touchdown market, I guess it's Jake Ferguson this year.
Let's go Ferguson. Dylan, give me one.
So I don't have nearly as much analysis as Mark did because you guys know how I treat these anytime touchdown scores. That's literally just pulling a name out of a hat.
I'm the same way, by the way. I don't bet anytime touchdowns really, besides the ones that I have like a system of betting, like Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Jake Ferguson. That's like really the 3 names that I look
Triple
for the
J
market every week on. Josh Jacobs as well sometimes. There's another
Quadruple J.
Oh my God, that's a lot of J's.
Yeah.
A lot of J's there. I think I'm going to go with. I want to take Dobbs. I want to take Dobbs again.
Let's do it.
Come on, that's gonna be a chunk of change.
We're gonna go positive on the year if we get this.
I'll go with my pick next. I'm going George Kittle. Dylan, I was praying you were going to say TJ Hawkinson, and then Connor has the pressure on him because we all have just white tight ends.
Hayden Hurst. No.
Tommy Tremble?
No. Saber
Go
money.
ahead, Connor. What's your pick?
I'm going James Conner against the Texans. They let up 1 to Joe Mixon this week, and they let up 2 to Rashad White 2 weeks ago. And I think James Conner, came back this week. I think Cardinals going to put up some points. I like him to get in.
All right, and mine was George Kittle. Like I said again, anytime touchdown parlay. Kittle, Jake Ferguson, James Conner, and Josh Dobbs. And then let's take a quick break, and then we'll talk a little college football. All right, let's talk college football right now. Dylan, big win for Michigan. We talked about it a little last night. This is going to be a little more broader segment instead of doing the Penn State stuff because we already kind of did all that. I want to discuss, after this weekend, we saw Georgia annihilate Ole Miss. We saw Michigan get a big win over Penn State on the road. We're getting obliterated by Georgia fans on Instagram right now and TikTok and all that. Who is the best team in college football right now? Because I slightly lean Michigan still. What, Dylan? Go ahead. Give us your answer.
No, I'm not. And I did that probably not for the reason you think. It's tough to tell. Right now, we have so many teams at the top that are undefeated. I think, me personally, I'm going to exclude Washington. I don't think Washington is in the running for best team in college football. I think Ohio State has the best resume. They have earned the right to be number one, I think. And I hate to say that. But then you have Michigan and Georgia who are right there too. And Michigan passes their first test. Georgia has passed every single test. And now with this win at Ole Miss, we might be able to consider that they have a better resume than Ohio State. Didn't really think about that. But, I mean, when you talk about who's the best, it's really tough to tell. Like Michigan, you have the fact that they beat Penn State and didn't have to throw a pass. Is that a good or a bad thing? Right? And you can look at it both ways. My Michigan fan side says it's a good thing we didn't even have to pass the ball. It's the style of football that Michigan plays. We go up, we run the clock out, and we celebrate once the clock hits triple zeros. But conversely, is that the game we're going to be able to play against Ohio State? A defense that if you would have told me 3 years ago Ohio State had this defense, I would have said you're absolutely crazy. But this is what you get when you go out in 2021 after that season and you hire the best defensive coordinator you can find. Jim Knowles has done amazing things for this Ohio State defense. And to be honest, as an unbiased, aspiring college football analyst, it scares me for Michigan. As a Michigan fan, I'm not scared one bit. We're going to beat them by 40.
Just as someone who would love to see Ohio State beat Michigan, I just have to say that 3 years ago, you wouldn't have imagined Ohio State would have this defense. 3 years ago, you wouldn't have imagined that Ohio State would have a quarterback as untalented as Kyle McCord.
Oh my gosh, Mark, we go days talking about this. Imagine how Marvin Harrison Jr. feels, right? Going from Stroud to Kyle McCord, one of the best wide receiver, the best wide receiver in college football, and having to catch passes from that guy. He's on deck. You can't go out and do something about that nowadays in the transfer portal.
It's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment. Ohio State and Alabama. It's worked out with Milroe, but like coming into the year the way they did, I mean, it cost Alabama a loss against Texas, and it's going to cost Ohio State their season when they play Michigan because Michigan's going to. I think they're going to brutalize them. To be honest, in Ann Arbor, I think it's going to be like a 31-10 win. Like I just think they're going to run all over them. Ohio State's not going to be able to move the ball, but I do think Georgia is overwhelmingly the best team in the country. That Ole Miss game just like shut me up. Any questions I had, it answered every concern I had about the defense. They're big bad Georgia. They're, as Brandon Walker would say, they're a rolling ball of chainsaws. Like they look like the Georgia we saw the last couple of years now, except I think they have a better quarterback. And, they did that yesterday without Brock Bowers or 2 days ago, whenever it was. I think Georgia's going to, trounce to a national championship again. They might not play a game as close as they did against Ohio State last year. That's my official prediction. I think Alabama in the SEC title game might be the hardest game they play, but I'm not even saying Bama's better than Michigan. I just think like that will probably be the toughest test. I think if Georgia gets in, the depth that they have roster wide is just so much greater than every other team. I think that once they get in, I think they're unstoppable. But if Bama can get them, then it changes the whole season because Georgia might not be in the playoff if Bama can beat them. But I think Georgia probably wins the rest of their games by double digits. That's my official take.
So I want to jump in real quick. Connor, Karter, I don't want to skip over you guys, but it came out maybe a couple hours ago. Circa posted Bama +3 as the opening line for the SEC championship. Mark, what do you think about that?
I would have guessed 8 or 9. I would have guessed -8.
Okay.
With Georgia, so
I thought it'd been a touchdown.
Yeah. I guess that means I like Georgia in that scenario if things remain the same. I mean, I do love Georgia this weekend. Like I love Georgia against Tennessee, so I guess it would make sense that I would love Georgia in that scenario against Bama.
Connor, who's the best team in college football?
Disclaimer, this is not a result of all the people in the comments of Instagram. Who are these clowns? You guys don't know football. Michigan was so unimpressive. I did not get bullied into this. I gave the caveat of my answer will probably change if Georgia thrashes Ole Miss, which they did. So I'm going back on my Michigan take. Not going back on it, but I'm going to say Georgia's the best team in college football right now. I just think you have to beat the king to beat the king. And against Ole Miss, that's the game I'd start. I wanted to see them come out, see if they would come out slow after that Missouri win. They didn't. They thrashed them. And until further notice, Georgia's the best team in college football. And now this is probably going to make Michigan Instagram or TikTok, and I'm going to get bullied for that. So I just don't know if we can win in this scenario. But give me Georgia right now.
The funniest part is none of us have brought up Florida State in the slightest or any of the Pac-12 schools.
We watch enough ACC football. Florida State's not really a threat. They're not really a threat.
Complete frauds.
Carter,
they've gotten away with so much crap this year. They got Duke the last quarter and a half without their starting quarterback.
They should have lost to Clemson.
Don't even get me started on Florida State. I don't know how you feel about that, Mark, but they're another team. They're probably going to find themselves. They might lose to Florida in the swamp now that I think about it, but they're probably going to find themselves sneaking into that last spot. Or, that's sad. I don't think they deserve it either. But they do deserve it, but they're not as good as that would reflect. But Carter, best team,
Georgia. I'm going back on it. I'm a
Michigan man. We're going back on his word. Okay, all right, Carter.
I'm a Michigan man, but I watched that Georgia game, and if you watched that Georgia game, you can't say anybody else. That was unbelievable. But I also feel like Ole Miss gets stuck in this spot every year. They play Bama or Georgia, and then all of a sudden it's just they get destroyed. Remember, was it last year, right, when Lane Kiffin was like, "Get your popcorn ready," and then they get schmagged right out of the gate. So I don't know.
Matt Corral days.
Yeah, the Matt Corral.
Oh, don't talk to us about Matt Corral as Panthers
Rest
fans.
in peace, Panthers. Yeah. No, I'm going to go Georgia. I think the national title game's Georgia-Michigan. I have my Michigan future, and I'll let it ride. There's no hedge there, Dylan. No hedge. Don't worry.
I love it. Go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
I do have my Florida State to make the playoff ticket from the preseason that I'm just like side-eyeing, and I'm like, I don't believe in you, but I hope you cash at the point. I hope it does, but I do think they will. I think they'll win out. I think they'll make the playoff, and I think they're not that good. And this is kind of what I wanted to compare two things, but Georgia, we all freaked out about that Missouri win, and it's like, oh, it wasn't good enough, and it was. Now Missouri's probably the number 10 team in the country. I haven't looked at the new rankings, but they're at least top 12 no matter how you slice it. And you look at, oh my God, the massive LSU win that Florida State had in week 1 that was the biggest game of the year for a while. And what a huge win and the biggest resume win of the year. LSU's like not in the top 20 or maybe they're fringe top 25, wherever they're at now. Like wins, we only think of them about how they were when they happened instead of like retroactively grading them, which I do think we should do. That Missouri win is maybe one of the better wins in the country.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead, Dylan.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say I agree with that. It's even that Florida State LSU game, something that we visited on midway through the season on this show, is like I hate to say it again, but you could really make a case for LSU outplaying Florida State there. There's a couple turnovers, fumbles that go the wrong way. Like that Florida State, I'm not completely bought in on. I do think you'll cash your ticket, Mark, because they don't have many challenges.
Don't jinx it. Knock on wood.
Yep, you're right. I'm sorry. I seriously didn't mean to do that. Yeah. I didn't mean to do that. Not that guy. I'm sorry. That was bad. Okay. Who will they likely get in the ACC championship? You guys know more about ACC.
Louisville. Yeah.
It'll be Louisville.
Okay.
Not Carolina.
Not Duke.
That's a whole nother topic.
My
Carolina
Duke
football.
ACC title ticket just went to crap this weekend because ACC refs rigged that game. They had UNC money line, so who's to say? Anyhow, Heisman. I want to transition talk about the Heisman. This has been, I think, one of the weirdest Heisman years ever because I think Bo Nix is now the favorite now, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So doesn't that feel wrong? Like, does that feel right? Because
it is kind of odd.
Maybe it's because I have this like weird sense of him being at Auburn. I'm like, oh, he's a bad quarterback, even though he's a great quarterback at Oregon now. But like, I have just that Auburn vision of him, and to think that he went from at Auburn, like what he was, and then now at Oregon, a Heisman favorite quarterback, it doesn't compute with me for some reason.
So I fell asleep during that game. I think I told you guys that yesterday or 2 days ago when we recorded. And
not a big track meet guy.
I was keeping an eye on Heisman odds throughout the night. I was really interested to see how Marvin Harrison Jr. was going to jump up, and then Penix for the Washington game. And then I woke up and I saw Bo Nix was minus 130. I was like, what in the world? He must have balled out. In terms of who should win the Heisman, and Brandon Walker said this multiple times today, Jaden Daniels. By far, he's the most talented player, I would say. But that's not what the award is nowadays. It's the best player on the best team, usually. And, you have guys like Bo Nix that's playing for an Oregon team that will probably win the Pac-12. At least that's what I think. Penix, a lot of turnovers for a Heisman candidate, but he's playing on one of the most exciting offenses in college football. I would love to say Jaden Daniels, but who knows? That's not what the award is anymore. It's not best player.
Mark, what do you think?
I have a scenario to pitch you guys. What if we had a Heisman winner, right? And he came back and his completion percentage was better. His yards per game was better. His yards per average was better. His air yards were better. His ADOT was better. His passer rating was better. His touchdown to interception ratio was better. And what if I told you, instead of making a case for this guy to repeat as Heisman, we're asking about whether or not he is crying too much after games and if he's a franchise quarterback. Now, I'm not saying he should be the Heisman, but he has the exact same stats we're talking about as Michael Penix, Bo Nix. He doesn't have the rushing stats of Jaden Daniels, but he's got the same stats as Jaden Daniels. I just want to remind people that Caleb Williams has a 68% completion percentage with 3,300 passing yards and 9.4 yards per attempt, 10.5 air yards per attempt, 29 touchdowns and 4 picks, a 172.1 passer rating, 11 rushing touchdowns. Caleb Williams is doing historic things, and it doesn't matter because he plays for an absolute buffoon in Lincoln Riley, and his defense it's the worst defense in college football history, at least in terms of what it's costing an all-time potential player who now, in terms of his college football resume, it's going to get forgotten to dust because this guy never made the playoff. Looking at Caleb Williams' football reference page and the fact that guy never made the playoffs is a crime. Lincoln Riley should never be allowed back in college football. Banish him.
Dylan.
Yeah, I got to hear Dylan's rebuttal to this. This is great.
Yeah, go ahead, Dylan.
My initial reaction is when you're considering the Heisman, you have to consider how he carries himself off the field. You got people that you've got people representing.
He did it on the field. He did it on the field.
On the field and off the field. It's
That's
both.
Fair.
You have people, not just the crying, but wants equity in the team that he gets drafted for, threatening to not go to the team he gets drafted for. I'm just saying, this guy's carrying the Heisman tag with him for the rest of his life. Do you want someone doing that?
Is he going to be on the State Farm commercials? Do you see that?
He's already carrying it. He's already carrying it. He's already in the Heisman house.
He does pretty well in the Nissan commercials, I will say. That UCLA Sweet T1, very funny. Now, in all seriousness, Mark, I never been a big Caleb Williams guy. Pac-12 football as a whole disgusts me as a Big Ten guy because there's no defense. You get totals in the 70s. You get totals it's just disgusting. I never stay up for the games. But
I'll bring that.
I don't. If it starts at 10:30, as a married man, I'm not staying up for that.
Football, you're not a football guy. You're not a football guy. I'm up watching Hawaii.
If football is being played at 10:30 p.m. in the Pac-12, it's not football. It's a track meet with a ball thrown in there. That's what
but
it
you'll
is.
wake up for Colts Patriots in Germany at 9 a.m.
I was up at 7 a.m. prepping
maybe.
for that game. But no, in all seriousness, aside from the shtick or whatever, it's funny you say that, Mark, because I would have never guessed that his stats were like that. You look at the odds board and you see the top 4 or 5, and you think that's really all, the only guys that are in the conversation. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. I'm still not a fan of him, but.
No, yeah, and he's not in the conversation because it's a narrative-based award. All in all, 100%. MVP, Heisman, anything that's based on player performance is going to be narrative-based. I just think it's funny, the Caleb Williams conversations last year as opposed to now. I'm having to defend on Twitter, I called him a generational prospect to the likes of Trevor Lawrence, and I'm having to defend that, and it's he's better. He's playing better than he did last year. It's a frustrating thing. But if I had to vote, it'd be Jaden Daniels. Long story short.
All right, let's talk about the games this weekend. Let's do Georgia Tennessee. Dylan, Georgia Tennessee. What's the line right now?
It's 10, right?
It's 10.
I think it was 10.5 yesterday. I'm sure it's moved a little bit, but that sounds about right. Now, this is Mark and I are going to go at odds here. My second team is Tennessee. I was pretty high on Tennessee last year. Going into this year, I thought Joe Milton was going to be the guy. Obviously, he wasn't because he forced Heupel and that whole team to change their offensive scheme. They no longer pass the ball as much as they did last year because they had Hendon Hooker, who probably should have won the Heisman if he would have stayed healthy. But they've changed their identity as like they're running the ball extremely well now. They're playing a decent amount of defense. Ultimately, what this game comes down to me, is Tennessee going to be able to dictate the tempo, which is, I think they're going to want to slow it down. I think they're going to want to play the game on the ground, which I don't know if that really benefits them or not, but it's what they've done well to this point this season. Joe Milton has no touch. The pass game, unless you're throwing it 60 yards down the field, I don't think it really opens up a lot for this Tennessee team. I've already bet Tennessee. I did get 10.5. I wouldn't go under 10, but I think if Tennessee can dictate the tempo, get it done on the ground, I don't think they can win, but I think they can keep this close. There's also the factor, and I might get clowned for this, but Tennessee's really, well, Carter, you touched on it with Penn State last week. Tennessee's playing with nothing to lose, right? They're just playing solely to play spoiler, and I do think that plays a part in it as well. But then again, Georgia, they don't really have room to lose either. So
on this one, I'll go next here. Give me Georgia. I'm not going to overthink this because, no, I did this with Kentucky and Alabama last week. Last second, I was like, I don't believe in Jalen Milroe in this Alabama team. Let me bet Kentucky. What a mistake. The Kentucky's boned me all year. Give me Georgia here. And, Knoxville guy now, local team, just moved here. A lot of guys here, a lot of people here do not like Joe Milton. Do not like Joe Milton. They're like, he can't win big games. Ready for Nico, whatever his name is, to come in next year. And that's just the vibe. I think there's a chance Tennessee loses by 3 scores. I really do. I think Georgia can come out here and assert themselves. So I like -10.
Oh, I thought you were going somewhere. Go ahead, Mark.
I'm on Georgia as well. I said all the reasons earlier, but they're rolling ball chainsaws. They figured it out. I think you look at how they've been lately. They smoked them last year. The last 4 years, Georgia's covered double-digit spreads each year. I think that they're just going to continue their domination over Tennessee.
I don't need to reiterate anything. Give me Georgia. Give me Georgia. I know we're doing Monday night. Give me Georgia. It's dog season. Yep. This is another. I want Tennessee to win for the fact of just create chaos with the college football playoff, but I just don't see it happening. Last game I want to talk about, and then we'll do a parlay and get out of here. Washington, Oregon State. The only thing I want to talk about in this one really is the fact that Oregon State is -1.5 now. So if you believe in rat lines, trap lines, whatever, that is it this week. That is, hey, this is the rat line of the week. Dylan, where are you at on this one?
Yeah, I'm not high on this Washington team. I'm as high as anybody can be. They're undefeated. They've obviously earned to be in the discussions that they are currently in. But I do think that they have a team that is not built for the postseason. And I think when they come up against a team like Oregon State, I even thought they were going to have trouble with Oregon. They had trouble. They ended up pulling it out. That game's played in Oregon. It's probably completely different. But I do like Oregon State here. I think I got them -105 yesterday. I think when you talk about the dynamics of betting too, there are going to be a lot of people. The public's going to come in and say, "Oh, an undefeated team is a dog. Take that." This line's not going to move, and I think that's pretty much going to tell you all you need to know. Oregon State is probably going to stay, 1 point either way of that pick'em range. I love Oregon State. Their offensive numbers are better than what I expected when I was looking at it. I think coming into the season, we were expecting a stout defensive team, and I was more surprised with their offensive numbers.
Mark, anything on this game?
Yeah, it's my Hannibal Lecter game of the year when the Pac-12 has a chance to cannibalize itself. The Pac-12 will cannibalize itself. Oregon State's winning this game outright. Each of the last 3 years, Washington and Oregon State has been decided by 6 points or less. It's been decided by a field goal 2 of the last 3 years. Oregon State has covered that spread each of the last 3 years. Last year, Washington won the game on a last-second field goal. That was in Washington. It's going to be a different story in Oregon State. They're 5-0 this year at home, 4-1 against the spread at home. I think Oregon State, this is Jonathan Smith's like, hey, come hire me. I'm in the Pac-2 next year. I'm interested. Michigan State, give me a call. Texas A&M, give me a call. Like, this is going to be Jonathan Smith's like standing on the field as the Beavers are going nuts around him. I think that this is going to be a situation like Jonathan Smith's statement win on Saturday. It's probably on the Pac-12 network for all I'm saying after all that. But
all the 20 viewers, you see that network. Yeah.
Connor, anything on this one?
I think Oregon State's the play here. I don't love putting my faith in DJU after I watched him at Clemson, but Oregon State's been good this year. And you talk about Heisman odds, we were talking about it. This is the game where Penix drops out of those that top 5 in odds. Yep. I really do think. I mean, this is the one. Don't bet Penix to win the Heisman because this is the trap game. Mark, you said it great. They're going to cannibalize themselves. Washington is going to screw themselves out of a spot. I like Oregon State strictly because the line makes no sense.
Dylan, you get mad at me because I don't say, "Oh, I had X amount of units on a game or whatever." 5 stars.
No, I don't get mad at you. I'll pump the brakes there, Carter.
I'll pump the brakes.
Anti-Carter.
5 star, whatever Dylan's system is. 5 stars. I have 5 units on Oregon
5 stars.
State
there we go. I love it.
I love Oregon State money line. Huge on their futures this year. I love them every which way. We've talked about it enough. Real quick, let's do a college football parlay. I actually did want to talk about Forrest Gump at the end, but let's do the college football parlay real quick. Connor, give us a pick.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, guys. I'm doing this on the fly. I took Carolina plus 7.5 against Clemson yesterday. It's now 6.5. So I don't really want to put that in the parlay as far as like a homer pick.
Dylan,
yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cincinnati, West Virginia over 55.5.
Love it. Mark.
So I'm tempted to throw Oregon State in there. I'm tempted to throw Arizona in there, but I'm not going to do it.
Okay. Well, I thought you were going to go Oregon State, so I had Arizona as my backup. So we might have to go.
I love that. Throw Arizona in there. But I'm going to go a little bit off the board. I'm going to go with Coastal Carolina minus 4.5 at Army. Coastal Carolina has been a team I've been backing week in and week out. I know Grayson McCall went out 3 weeks ago, and I think the market keeps they keep disrespecting Coastal after this injury, and Coastal keeps shoving it back down their face here. Vegas keeps looking stupid. Coastal's 8-2 against the spread, 4-1 against the spread on the road. They've covered 6 straight games. Each of the last 3 weeks with their backup quarterback, 34, 28, and 31. They've had some of their best offensive performances of the year. Coastal's a wagon right now for me, so I'm sticking with Coastal.
I love Side note, real quick. Your pick. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I do.
Just real quick, it's amazing that Coastal's 8-2 against the spread. I think I bet on them once this year and it lost. that is just absolutely that is amazing.
Connor, go ahead.
We're getting gross. Hike up your sleeves, put your boots on. We're getting into the weeds. ACC football here.
Yep.
Oh yeah, we're going NC State, Virginia Tech under 45.5. We are getting gross. We're getting disgusting. The state defense has been pretty solid all year. Virginia Tech put up a lot of points last week. I think it was Boston College they played. They only put up 3 against Louisville the week before. I think this is one of those gross, 17-9 games that you see out of the ACC in the mid. So give me the under.
Is it on the CW? It's gotta be. It's gotta be on the CW.
It's not. It's on the ACC network. Florida State's on the CW this week, actually.
It's bookended by Angel and Smallville.
Jane the Virgin is gonna take over the halftime show. Do you guys want? I'm taking both of these straight up. But do you want Oregon State or do you want Arizona in the parlay? I'll let you guys decide.
Let Mark choose.
I'm fine with either. I'll let Dylan and Connor pick. I like them about equally.
Arizona.
Okay, I'll go with it. Arizona.
All right, Arizona. That's it. All right, college football parlay this week. Arizona money line, Cincinnati, West Virginia over 55.5. NC State, Virginia Tech under 45.5. Coastal Carolina minus 4.5. Last thing we'll get to here, Dylan, you wanted to bring up something about Forrest Gump.
Yes. So, Mark, I know you're a bit of a movie buff. I'm not. I just never really watched movies growing up. When I married Abby, there were a list of movies that we had to watch that I hadn't watched yet. Forrest Gump was one. Watched it 2 weeks ago. It was a good movie. I think I gave it an 8 when we talked about it on the live show. Jenny's the antagonist. I understand she has trauma or whatever, but Jenny's the problem. She just kept, and I could tell, Mark, maybe you and I had a little bit of a similar history in high school, but it's just keep pushing the trustworthy guy to the side, go back. And then once you're done having your fun, you go back to the guy that's been there the whole time. You're like, oh, you know what? I got this disease that magically no one knows about, and I'm going to marry you. That's insane.
Is there a conversation? This is out of bounds by me to suggest this. Is there a conversation that Forrest Gump might have been a cuck? That's a conversation that has to be had. At a certain point.
Start the narrative. I can give. I mean, it makes
question.
sense to me. And this is. I do want to. Serious note. I don't want to make light. There's obviously a storyline there about trauma, family relationships. But
Chris
you look
Broussard.
at the. Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, there you go. It seems like he's come up on the show a lot the last couple weeks.
You know, she had a tough childhood, and I don't want to downplay that. It's very serious. But in terms of the plot of the movie, that's really what this is focused about. And I was watching it, and I looked at Abby, and I was like, Jenny's kind of the antagonist. Actually, I think she told me. I can't remember. But I was like, Jenny's the antagonist here.
Yeah,
Maybe antagonist is too strong, but
I don't think it's strong enough. I mean, it really comes back to like the Lane Kiffin, you can't blame mental health for all your problems situation, Jenny. Like, how about you grow up and stop treating the people you love in your life like, bags of trash. That's my take, though. Forrest Gump, it's one of legitimately my 5 favorite movies of all time. So I was worried that the take that you were going to throw at me was that, like, the popular, like, this is the end, Jay Baruchel take, where it's like, I think it's a terrible movie because it makes me sound cool. But I don't know if anyone gets that this is the end reference. But I think it's like a fun movie for people to hate on and be like, I actually think Forrest Gump sucks. But I think it's fantastic. It holds up really well. The fact that Forrest, I'm a big history nerd. He was interspersing with all these different big historical moments, way ahead of its time.
And that's,
go ahead.
I know we're working on short time here, but that's one thing I told, Abby's family talking about the movie was like, now we have AI. The stuff that was in that movie was a little corny in terms of like the voiceovers and stuff, but it's really not that far off from what we have now. Like that stuff had to be so groundbreaking when that movie came out. It was just overall very neat, but I'm glad that we're on the same wavelength there.
Well, pop culture corner a couple times.
A little pop culture minute.
Yeah, there we go. All right, that'll do it from us. Mark, thank you again for coming on. Dylan, Connor, thank you as always. Make sure to subscribe at CarterCast on everything. Follow us on socials at CarterCast on Twitter. You know the drill. At Wilkerson A. Dylan, at Connor_Sparrow, at CarterB8. And Mark, what's your Twitter again?
Yeah, you can follow me at Mark Henry Jr. _. I do a radio show every Saturday on Fox Sports The Gambler. You can find the info for it on my Twitter.
Perfect. I love it. Subscribe to the show. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll see y'all next time. Thanksgiving episode next week.
Yes.
Bye-bye.